Alright, so I'm back, and I've UV mapped the entire thing and attached it together into one object. Okay, all one piece. So there's just a few things I wanted to mention here before we move on, just in case you haven't actually done your mapping yet. Okay, so like I said, I used the demo version of UV layout to do my mapping, so I exported all the pieces out to there, mapped it, and then imported them back into Max. And after I got them in here, they were still looking a little rough in some spots. The faces were a little faceted on the wood, and that's just because of the technique we used when we painted on there. It, kind of screwed up the smoothing. All right, and on the tank it was a little rough as well. So what I decided to do was just add a smooth modifier to each separate piece after I brought it back in, and I just ticked on auto smoothing to smooth out the faces. All right, I'll just show you here. I'll switch shaders quickly. All right, you can see it's a lot smoother than it looked the last time you saw it. Okay, our boards are a lot smoother too. Okay, so I just added the smooth modifier to every single piece of this. All right, and if you wanted to, take the time, you could assign proper smoothing groups to it. But in this case, I think the auto smoothing will work fine. All right, so after I did that, I just grabbed one piece of it, converted it to editable poly, and then just used the attach button inside the edit poly rollout to attach the other pieces to it. So it was all one object. Okay. And then I started just laying out the UVs, scaling them, and everything like that. I'll just switch checker patterns here quickly. Okay, so what I tried to do, and it's always a good idea if you can, is keep the size of your chunks uniform, so the scale's pretty much even over the entire thing. And you can see it's close here, but it's not perfect. The checker pattern down here is a little bigger than it is on the tank. Okay, so the tank's going to have slightly higher resolution than the wood, but that's okay. It's as even as I could get it. Alright, so just pay attention to that when you're doing it. Try to get everything kind of the same size. And another thing you always want to pay attention to, or I always try to, is keeping everything in the right direction. Okay, so you can see here the text is upright on pretty much every piece. Alright, besides the side here and the pipe, but everything else is facing up. Okay, and that's going to be important later on, because when we start texturing, we're going to want to add this moss and stuff to the bottom of our posts and to these lower boards. Okay, so we're going to need to know in Photoshop what part is the top of the post and what part is the bottom. Okay, so yeah, just having everything upright like this is going to make it a lot easier when we get into that part. We'll know what's the bottom. Okay, so that's another good thing to always pay attention to if you can. Alright, so I'll just quickly show you the UVs here. Alright, and how I pack them. And it was a little bit of a pain in the ass to actually pack them in here because there's so many pieces. And I tried to take up as much room in the 0 to 1 as I possibly could. I couldn't use all of it, but you definitely want to try to fill up the whole box if you can. Alright, we're using probably about 90%, so that's okay. We do have some wasted space, but it's not too bad. Alright, so I'll just quickly show you how I laid them out, just in case you need some help organizing yours. Alright, so at the top here I have the tank, and it's really the focal point. And your eye is going to really go right to that when you look at it. So I wanted to make sure I gave it enough space that the texture is going to look really good on that particular piece. Okay, so I left it pretty huge, and then underneath that I have the bottom of the roof, right, which I chopped off. I'm just going to switch shaders here again so it's easier to see. Alright, so there's the bottom, and inside that I actually have the bottom of the tank. Okay, just to save some space. And then over here I have the rest of the roof. Okay, and it's not awesome. The mapping isn't, fantastic. You can see here. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. And I just did it all in one chunk just to make it a little easier when we want to actually, paint on there later on. Okay, and then down underneath in the middle I have the pinnacle chopped up into 4 pieces here. Okay, and then underneath that I have the 4 footing blocks. And I just split the corner and then just flatten it down. Alright, and another thing you want to pay attention to, I didn't overlap any pieces at all, and I gave everything unique space, and that's just because I want to do an ambient occlusion map for this, and if we have stuff overlapping we might get some weird shadow marks on some of our pieces where we don't want them. Okay, so I made sure I gave everything unique space and didn't have anything overlapping. Alright, so underneath the footing blocks there I have the 4 corner posts. Okay, and again, we know that this is the bottom, so when we get in there and want to start putting moss on it later, we'll know that we have to do it down at this end and not up here, okay, because they're facing in the right direction. Alright, over next to that I have one of the side beams, okay, and I have the other one up here at the top, and I just couldn't fit them in any other way, so that's why I don't have them together. Alright, in the middle here I have the 2 sides of the ladder, okay, and again, I made sure that the bottom was down and the top was up. Alright, underneath that I have the sideboards, and we had a whole whack of those, so what I did was I sorted them out and organized them by side. Okay, so these 3 right here are the 3 on the front. and I actually organized them from bottom, middle, and top. Okay, and I did that on each side of the tower. Alright, so over here we have all the 4 that are on this side together, okay, and then the 3 that are on the back, and these are the 4 that are on the other side. And then I have the 4 beams that are underneath our deck up here together. Okay, we're not going to see those, but I just put them together to keep organized. Above that I have the ladder rungs, right in here. And again, I kept them in the order that they're actually on the model, so I have top all the way through to bottom. Okay, and again, that's because if we add moss, we're probably going to want to add some to the last 1 or 2 on the bottom of the ladder, so we need to know where that is. Okay, and then I have the pipe up in the top corner there, and then I have the deck boards all together right here. Right, I'm just going to switch shaders again quickly. Okay, all the deck boards, and I did those in order too, from front to back. Alright, just so we'll know later on where we're working. And then all that was left was all the ends of our boards. Alright, so I stacked the deck ends for the deck boards. They're together. Okay, and then what I did is I sorted out the other pieces for the end boards here on the sides, in top and bottom as well. So if I select these ones down here, you can see they're all the lower boards. Right, the bottom half of the tower. And same with these are the 4 bottom of the posts in the corner. Okay, and everything above it is on the upper part of the tower. And that's for the same reason. If you want to add moss to the fronts of the boards, we're going to need it on the end there. Else it's not going to look right, obviously, if the end's really clean and the sides have all this stuff growing on it. So we needed to know where those were too, so we know we have to put moss on these guys when we get to that point. Okay, so yeah, that's how I organized it. You don't have to match it exactly, you can lay it out differently, but it's good to try to keep as organized as you can just to make it a little easier later on. Alright, so let's move on here and we'll finally start texturing it. Before we actually go out into Photoshop, I'm just going to render out a UV template here that we can use as a guide when we get in there. Okay, so let's just do that while we're in here right now. Alright, so it's easy to do. We'll just go to Tools, Render UV Template. Alright, and I'm going to try to do a 4096 or 4K map for this. And that'll really depend on the speed of your computer. I mean, mine's not, by any means wicked fast. It's, it's just your average computer. It's a few years old. And I didn't have any problem doing a 4K, which this is right here. But if you have a really old or slow computer, that 4K might cause you some problems later on, because when we get the PSDs put together, we're going to have a lot of layers and they're going to be absolutely giant. So we might get some memory errors if you have a slower computer and not very much RAM. I actually have 3 gigs myself, which isn't very much. So we'll try a 4K. If we have problems, we can always shrink it down later and make it a 2K. But we'll try it. Okay, so I'm going to set it to 4096 by 4096, and then we'll just leave everything at default here, and hit Render UV Template. Okay, and it'll render it, and we'll save it. And do it on the desktop. Just call it UVs. All right, and we'll do it as JPEG. And say save. Okay, and then we'll close this stuff up. We don't need it anymore. All right, turn off the unwrap. Okay, so the template's rendered out, and like I said, I'm going to render the ambient occlusion map inside of xNormal. So we're going to have to export the model out. Okay, and I'll just quickly go over where you can get xNormal from. You can just go to xnormal.net and just go into the downloads here, and you can just download it. And I have version 3.16. You could try the beta if you want to, but this is the version I'm going to be using. Okay, so you just click that. It takes you over to Eat 3D, and you can just download it down here. Alright, which I've already done, so do that and install it. And then for the export out of Max, I always use the OBJ exporter from GuruWare. Okay, so you can find that at guruware.at. Alright, and if you want to download it, you just go down to, you see Exporter, OBJ exporter, and click on that. And then down at the bottom of the page here, you can just download it and install it. Okay, and it's very similar to the one that actually ships with Max. I just prefer it. I think it does a little better job, so I'll be using this, but you can use the default one if you want to. Alright, so maybe go grab those, and we'll continue on here. Okay, so let's go File, Export Selected with the tower selected. I'm just going to do this on the desktop as well. Alright, we'll call it Water Tower. And when you install that OBJ exporter, it'll show up as GW OBJ exporter. Okay, or you can use the Wavefront one, which is the default. Okay, but I'm going to use this, so we'll select it, save. Okay, and xNormal only works on meshes that are triangles or quads, so just make sure you have quads set here. I'm pretty sure these are still all the defaults. Okay, so I'm just going to leave everything else and just say export. Okay, it'll do its magic, and then we'll say done, and there it is, exported out. Okay, so I'm going to jump out to the desktop now and just open up xNormal quickly. Okay, and this is a really kick-ass little program. It'll let you bake out all kinds of maps for different things, and it's pretty fast and it's free, and it does a really good job, so highly recommended. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to get our model in here is just click on high definition meshes. Okay, and to add the model in here, I'm just going to right click on the bar and say add mesh. Alright, we'll jump out to the desktop, find our water tower OBJ and say open. Okay, and we'll also add this to the low definition meshes the same way. Right click the bar, add mesh, pick it, and say open. Okay, because we only have one model. And then we'll just go down to baking options here, and we'll set an output path. All right, do that first. So I'm going to do this on the desktop again and just call it water tower AO. All right, and we'll leave it as a PNG and say save. And you could actually bake out your AO inside of Max using the render texture option if you want to. And if you watched my previous mailbox tutorial, I went through the process of how to set that up and render it out inside of Max. And I usually try to avoid using render texture if I can, just because I've had problems with some weird results, and some people actually had problems getting the mailbox to render correctly for whatever reason. I'm not sure really what was causing the problem for some people, but just to make sure that didn't happen this time, that's why I'm using xNormal. But if you'd prefer to do it another way, you can. Alright, so we'll set our output path, and then I'm just going to set the size to 4K, so 4096 by 4096. And again, this is really going to slow it down. It's going to take a while to do this, so if you have a slower computer, you could always do a 2K and then just make it 2 times bigger in Photoshop if you want to. Edge padding I have set to 2, bucket size is at 32, which is the default. Okay, we'll use the default renderer, and I'm just going to leave the anti-aliasing thing at 1. Right, you can take it up higher if you want to, but it's going to really slow it down, so we'll say 1. And then we just need to set our map. Alright, so over here's all the maps that xNormal can bake out, and there's a lot of them. Alright, so let's tick on ambient occlusion. And we'll just go over, open up the options box. Okay, and we don't need anything super high quality for this, so we could probably leave it at 128 for the raise, but I might just take it up to 256. And it is going to slow it down the higher you go. Okay, for the distribution method, I'm going to use cosine, and I'm not sure, I can't remember if that's the default, so if it's not cosine, just set it to cosine. Okay, and then I also have my background color set to black here. Okay, and that's it, that's all we need to do, so let's close that. And then we'll just go down and hit generate map. Okay, and it's going to start rendering it out here. And again, xNormal is fast, but this map's going to be pretty big, so it's going to take maybe 45 minutes or so to do this. And if you don't see yours rendering here, just pull down to notify tile updates, and you'll actually see it rendering in real time. All right, so it's going to take a while, so I'm just going to pause the video and I'll come back when this finishes up. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so I'm back. The AO finished rendering, and I'm just in Photoshop here, and I'm just going to quickly open it up and take a look. Alright, so we'll go to the desktop and find it. Alright, open it up, and here's how it turned out. And it's not super high quality, as you can see. We have some pretty dark areas, lots of shadows, and the bottom of the tank here, that's pretty blacked out. I mean, you can barely see it, and these are just the cracks between our deck boards where the light came in. Okay, and same with over here, this is just the outline of the tank sitting on the deck boards. Alright, so that's actually correct, even though it looks a little weird. I'm just going to check out the ends here. And some of these look kind of whacked out, but it's just that a lot of them are butted up against other pieces, and it's blocking the light completely, so they're turning out pretty much pitch black in some places. And I think this weirdness down here on the bottom of the quarter post is just some interpenetration from our footing blocks sticking into the post. Alright, so not fantastic, but usable. Okay, so that's fine. We'll leave that, and let's actually open up our UVs that we rendered out of Max. Alright, so I'm just going to find those and open them up. And we'll start with this as a base for our actual diffuse map. I'm just going to set this up so it works properly as a guide. Alright, so let's go over to the background layer. I'm just going to hold down Alt and double click it to convert it to a normal layer, and then we'll just make a new layer. Alright, and drag it underneath. Alright, so for the UV layer, I'm just going to change the blending mode to screen. Alright, so we can properly see through it. And we'll just fill the background layer there, layer 1, with the paint bucket in black. Okay, so to start out, I think what I'm going to do is just probably get the wood out of the way first, because we have so many wooden pieces, and then we'll move on and start working on the metal. Okay, so let's go out, and I'm just going to open up a wood map here. And I have a little texture source folder that I put together for this. Alright, so I'm just going to open that up, and these are all the images I'm going to be using to texture this thing. And if you want to actually use these ones yourself, you can download them from my website, christainalign.com, and there's a link to them in the tutorial section. Or you can use your own images if you prefer. Okay, and I'm not really sure where I got most of these, so I think most of them are from CG Textures, which is a really great resource that you can check out if you've never been there. They have lots and lots of stuff. Okay, but I'm just going to start with this wood one here that I have, and this will be like our main wood texture, and it's not massive as you can see, so I'm just going to copy it, Control A and Control C, alright, and then we'll just go back to our UVs here and just paste it on top of layer 1 with Control V. Alright, so what I'm going to do in this case, depending on the wood you want to use, if you have some real massive wood textures, you might be able to, just tile it a few times and cover up pretty much all the boards at once. But I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to actually scale this down and use this singly on every single piece. Okay, it's going to take a bit of time doing it that way, but I think we're going to get a better quality texture if we spend the extra time. And the only reason being is I really don't like trying to tile wood. Because of the grain, you can really run into some nasty looking problems if you try to like patch out seams and fix problem areas. It can turn into a real disaster. So yeah, I'm just going to use this over and over again. Alright, so I'm going to do Control T on it and we'll just scale it down. Alright, so we'll take it down just so it's more manageable and closer to the size we need. And I'm just going to start up here on the deck board, so we'll shrink it down like that, hit enter to exit transform mode, and let's just get in there and zoom in so we can see. Alright, so we got the pipe up in the corner. We don't need to worry about that right now. So I'm just going to start on this one, which is one of our side beams. Alright, I'm just going to fit this over top of it. Alright, and I'm going to try to take it down as much as I can, just to really improve the quality. And as I've mentioned in my other tutorials, it's never a good idea to scale images up bigger than they originally were, because you're going to really lose quality if you do that. But if you scale them down, you're actually going to kind of improve the quality because the detail is going to be really compacted in there. Okay, so scale it down like that, hit enter. Alright, and I'm just going to overlay it like that, and then copy it again with Control A and C, and we'll paste it, Control V. Alright, I'm just going to drag it up, and I'm just going to continue this and do it on every single piece of wood. Alright, and I know it seems like a weird way to do it. Generally, you don't want to reuse the same image over and over again on different parts of your model, because you're going to notice repeating details and tiling. But in this case, I don't think we're really going to notice it. We are going to overlay some dirt and it'll break it up a little more. Okay, so I'm just going to go down to the second one here and just use a slightly different part of the picture. Okay, and we can even flip this around. So let's do Control T, and we'll right click and just flip it maybe horizontal. Okay, just to change it up, and then we'll say enter. Okay, and I'm going to try to get the seam in between the UV islands here. Alright, and I actually left a little bit of space when I laid them out just for that exact reason, so we could easily fit them in or chop off what we don't want. Okay, so we'll paste again. Alright, I'm just going to continue on board by board. Alright, maybe just flip this one horizontally. Let's flip it vertically as well. Okay, just to get some different detail on there. We'll try to change it up as much as possible. Alright, so I'm just going to continue on going down. Alright, I might just move this up and try to use a different piece of it. Alright, we don't have a lot of room to work with because the image is fairly small, so we'll try to vary it as much as we can. And I'm just going to chop off this overlapping part here. Alright, so just drag a selection over that part and hit delete. Okay, just to make sure we don't have any seams showing up on our other boards. Okay, and we'll paste again. Alright, just going to move it around a bit. Right, this one I might just flip horizontal. Alright, just make sure we're covering everything. Alright, enter, and let's chop off this top part up here again. Alright, delete that. Paste again. Alright, I might just flip this one vertical. Alright, just use the bottom half of it maybe this time. And a lot of these are going to be covered up by the tank when we're done, so we're not going to see a lot of this detail anyway, which is also going to be, good because it's going to hide a little bit of the repetitiveness of the picture. Okay, so we'll delete this off the other one and just continue on. Alright, paste again, Control V, drag it down. Alright, maybe like that. Just want to make sure you're not clipping anything. Okay, one more time. Alright, I'm just going to flip this one horizontally and maybe vertically. Alright, hit enter to exit transform mode, and we'll just chop off the excess up here. Okay, delete. And I'll go along after, and I think just clean up some of the parts where it's overlapping other pieces, but let's actually zoom out here for a second. Okay, and I'm just going to turn off the UV layer, and we'll save this out as a PSD, so we'll go File, Save As, and I'm just going to save it on the desktop. We'll just call it Water Tower Diffuse. Okay, and we'll leave it as a PSD for now, and we'll just save it. And then as we go through this and we start building this up, I'm going to continually check it back in Max just to make sure it's working, and you're not going to notice any of these repeating details. Alright, so let's go back to Max. Okay, and before we preview our texture, I'm just going to maybe throw some quick lighting in here just so we can get a better idea of how it's going to look when it renders. Okay, so we'll jump out into the top view for this, and I think I'll just throw in maybe some quick 3-point lighting. Alright, so I went ahead of time and just figured out where I wanted to put my lights, and I know the coordinates, so I'm just going to type them in manually, so it'll be easier for you to match, and also so to save some time here. So I'm going to go over to the create panel and just go over to the lights panel, and we'll just grab a target direct here, and I'm just going to drag out a light from the top left corner here, just pointing at the model. Okay, and this will be like our key light. Okay, so I'm just going to right click on the move tool to bring up the move transform. Alright, so on the X here, I'm just going to do negative 134. Okay, we'll hit tab, and we'll do 555 on the Y, and then on the Z, we'll just do 572. Okay, and hit enter. Alright, and we'll close that. And then let's set it up quickly in the modify panel. So I'm going to turn shadows on for this one, and I'll just leave it at shadow map for now. Alright, let's open up the intensity rollout, and we'll just make this a little brighter, so maybe 1.3 on the multiplier. And for the color, I'm just going to make it slightly yellow. So I'm just going to lower this down in the green to maybe 251, and we'll take this down a little bit to get some yellow in there. Alright, maybe 242 on the blue channel, and we'll say close. Okay. And let's also open up the directional parameters rollout and just hit overshoot so we don't see our cone in the render. Okay, so there's one light, and let's just add a fill one quickly. So we'll go back to the light panel, grab another target direct, and we'll just drag one out from over here. Alright, aiming at the center. Alright, and let's right click the move tool again, and for this one we'll do negative 715 on the X, and then on the Y we'll do negative 178. And for the Z, let's do 143, and hit enter. Okay, and then close this, and let's go back to the modify panel. Alright, so I'm not going to turn on shadows for this one. I am going to take the multiplier down to maybe 0.6. Alright, so it's a little dimmer, and let's also make the color kind of like a bluish gray. So I'm just going to take the red channel down a bit. Alright, maybe around 170 or 175. Alright, the green channel, take that down a bit too. Right, like 180 or maybe 190. Okay, and I'm just going to lower the blue channel down to around 200. Okay, just so it's kind of a grayish blue, and we'll say close. Okay, and let's also tick on overshoot. Alright, and we'll just add a final backlight. So let's go back to the create panel, grab another target direct, and just drag it out from the back there. Okay, and for this one, let's do 240 on the X, negative 80 on the Y, and we'll just do 357 for the Z and hit enter. Alright, and then close and go into the modify panel. We'll leave shadows off here. I'm going to leave the color the same and just take the multiplier down a little bit to maybe 0.4. Alright, so it's a little dimmer, and then we'll hit overshoot. Okay, so really quick 3-point setup, but it should be fine just for us to preview our textures. Okay, so I'm going to jump into perspective here and just kind of get in here and kind of find a decent angle on it. I'm just going to drag my viewports bigger too, so I'm going to grab the center of the viewports here and just drag this up so the perspective window is a lot bigger. Okay, and then we'll just kind of find a decent angle for it. Alright, maybe like that, and we'll just use active shade here to quickly preview our texture. You can do renders if you want to, but I usually use active shade just so it's a little quicker. Okay, so let's turn that on. Just going to go views, active shade. Alright, so really quick lighting, but it should work for our tests. Okay, so let's open up the material editor. Alright, we'll just grab a new slot, and I'll just use a standard material for this, and let's open up the map box for the diffuse channel, and we'll choose bitmap. Okay, and we'll go back to the desktop, find our diffuse map that we made and open it. Alright, we'll say OK. And let's turn on show and viewport by hitting the little cube here, and then we'll just drag and drop it on the tower. Okay, so most of it's black obviously, so we can't really see anything, but the wood's not looking too bad there, and as we get more pieces of it covered, we'll get a better idea of how it's going to look. Okay, so we'll just leave this for now. We'll go back and continue on. I'm just going to do a save here, now that we have the scene set up with lighting. Alright, and we'll jump back to Photoshop and just continue working. So let's turn on the UVs again. Okay, and we'll just continue on. I think I'll move over and maybe do the corner posts next. Okay, so let's zoom in on these guys down here. Alright, and we'll just do Control V and paste our wood. Alright, and obviously we want the grain to run in the right direction, so let's just do the Control T on this, right click, and we'll just flip it 90 degrees in either direction. Alright, and then we'll just try to cover it up. Alright, so I'm going to scale it down slightly, so it kind of fits the width of the post a little better. Alright, maybe like that, and then we'll say enter. Alright, and I'm just going to copy it again, Control A, C, and then paste with V. Alright, and we'll just continue on until we get all four covered. Alright, so we'll stick this over here. Again, you want to make sure you have the seam in between the chunks, and let's flip this around so it's a little different. I'm just going to flip it vertically. Okay, and we'll paste again. Alright, move to the next one. Alright, do Control T. I'm just going to flip this horizontally. Okay, enter to exit transform mode, and paste one more time with Control V. Alright, get that last one covered up. Let's flip this around. Just going to flip it vertically, and we'll flip it horizontally. Okay, just like that. Alright, so let's combine these. Alright, so I'm just going to grab the top four layers and do Control E on them. Okay, just so they're all in one layer. And I'm just going to chop the top off here so it's not overlapping our concrete. So we'll drag a selection around those guys. Alright, and just hit delete. Okay, and we'll clean up the rest after. Let's just move on and actually start going on these pieces here. So we'll paste again, Control V. Alright, and this obviously isn't going to fit our beam piece here, so I'm just going to leave that one for now and move on and do the ladder. Alright, so we'll just get the ladder sides out of the way. Alright, so just kind of cover it up there. Alright, might scale it down a little bit more. Again, we don't want to change the scale too drastically, else it's going to kind of look weird on the model. Alright, so take it down, keep it close to the same size, hit enter. Alright, and then I'm going to copy it again, Control A, C, and paste with V. And we'll just cover up the other half of it, the other post. Alright, down here. And let's actually use a different part of the map for it. And might just flip this vertically as well. Alright, might go over to this side, get some of that detail on it. Alright, we'll say enter, and then I'm just going to cut off the rest of this one. Alright, actually let's cut off the top here, where it's overlapping the upper one. I'll zoom in here, and hopefully this isn't too hard for you to see. I'm just going to delete this overlapping piece here with delete. Okay, and then I'm going to combine the two, layer 14 and 15, with Control E, and we'll just zoom out here for a sec, and I'm just going to trim off the excess. Alright, so we'll drag a selection down the side there, and delete, and then we'll go down the other side. This one's a little closer to our beam pieces, so we're going to have to be a little more careful. Alright, just drag down that side. Alright, we'll cut off the bottom here. I'm just going to hold down Shift and just add to the selection. Okay, and delete, just to get rid of it. Alright, and we'll move up and do the rungs here. So we'll paste again, Control V. Alright, let's flip it around. So Control T, right click, flip it in one direction 90 degrees, and we'll just try to cover a few of these at a time. Alright, so just going to zoom in. Alright, so let's move this around. I might just do the top three altogether, I think. Alright, so we'll cover those guys up like that. Alright, paste again. Actually, let's copy it again. Control A, C, and V. Alright, we'll just drag it up and cover the remaining two with a different piece of the picture. Alright, maybe like that. Okay, and let's just trim this off. Alright, so I'm going to drag a selection around the two rungs there, the two bottom ones, Okay, and we'll do Control-Shift-I to invert the selection, and then we'll just hit delete to remove the rest of it that's overlapping. Okay, and then same with up here on the top. I'm just going to switch to layer 16, and we'll drag another selection out. Alright, around those three. And then hit Control-Shift-I and delete. Okay, so let's just combine layer 16 and 17 together for now. Control-E. And I am going to combine all the wood onto a single layer when we're done. Alright, so let's turn off the guide, and we'll save and check it out in Max. Alright, so file save, and it'll update for us when we get in here. So we'll see how it looks. Okay, so we're a little far away here. I'm just going to close the active shade view by right-clicking. Close. Okay, and we'll just get in a little closer so we can actually see if this is going to hold up okay. Alright, so views, active shade again. Okay, so not too bad actually. The detail is holding up, I think. Good enough. Alright, so let's just do a save here in Max. And we'll go back to Photoshop and just continue on overlaying wood. Alright, so I'm going to turn the guide back on, and we'll just maybe fill in these guys here.